Welcome back, guys, to the official Kraken YouTube channel. You're here on video tutorial number 8, where we're building the KV5TT kit bag by bag.
So you guys want to follow along, we'll be starting on page 22, bag G, in block 39. So let's get started. Block 39, we're going to be assembling the frame plate upright. We're going to be using, installing some roll cage mounts, some gas tank mounts, servo mounts, the sway bar mount, and pay close attention to the frame upright. You want the writing to be facing the outside. Nate, we'll go ahead and start building from the bottom, and we're going to be installing the first servo mount. So you got one of these guys here, and it goes into this position.
So these holes,
those two
right
holes.
Here.
Yep, that's it. And the two servo mount facing upward, just like that. Now to secure those in place, you're going to want to pay attention to use the shorter screw for the top servo mounts. And so what we're going to be using here is a button head 4x12 screw. So that one is the shorter button head. Refer to your manual. If you're not sure of screw sizes, you could just lay the screw right over top of the image on your manual, and it is an exact sizing. So here's the top one. And then for the bottom, you're going to be using the button head 4x16.
So through the magic of editing, we've got this first screw in. Now we're actually going to use this electric screwdriver for the second one. This is, again, the longer screw going in here. And we don't have to use any thread locker because it's just going into plastic. Make sure that this is tight on both ends. And we're good.
Okay, so the next one you're going to do similar piece. And what you're looking to do here is you got a whole array of screw holes here. You're going to be using these two screw holes there.
Okay.
So the way that you have it sitting on there right is perfect.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you're using your flat head 4x12 shorter screw on the top. Okay, all good to go?
All good.
Okay, the next step is we're gonna mount the gas tank plastic on there. You want to put that through the hole right next to the Kraken emblem, and that goes on the inside with this piece facing. So if you're holding your frame plate like this, and to secure that, you're going to be using the button head 4x12 right there. What he's doing is he's holding in one hand the frame plate in place, and then he's using his thumb to hold the gas tank mount in place while he screws the screw in. So here you can leave the gas tank mount a little bit loose here and tighten it up later, because when you put the gas tank in place, you may want to have to adjust it a little bit, and then you'll tighten it down after that. So next we're going to go with the roll cage mount. We're going to move back towards the rear section, and the way that this mounts on here is like this. And the holes line up. There's a larger hole on the bottom and a smaller hole on the top, and you kind of have the curved section pointing outward. And so what you're going to do is you're going to put your button head screw through this end. So we're going to be using the 5x16 button head screw. So now we're going to install the sway bar mount into the frame plate. We want to take the threaded end and go from the inside. There's little channels on here to hold it in place, and it'll be captured inside the frame plate. Note that there's a hole in here, a threaded hole. That hole needs to be facing towards the back. So when you slide this in here, it's going to be facing this way here. So we got primer, we got blue Loctite, we got these little channels in the nut. We're going to get that facing downward, and we're going to screw that on. We're going to use our crescent wrench to tighten it down just there. And we're going to move on to the other side frame plate.
Alrighty, folks, moving into block 40. We're going to take this frame upright and basically do the exact same thing that we did with the other one, since these two are kind of mirrored opposites, and we'll start doing that now. So here we have our finished product. We just got finished with using our croissant wrench, and let's get to the next block.
I'm going to be installing the chassis brace on block 41.
These M5 lock nuts are going to be captured in this right here, and we want to make sure that the nylon side is facing up. So we're going to get them fitted right here and just push them in, make sure that they're snug. Okay, so we've opted to not pressing these in, but using a hammer. You just want to make sure that they're laying flat so that you're not hitting them in at an angle, and then just kind of go down. And then there's a little chamber to slide this one in. Keep in mind that you're going to be keeping the nylon side facing up, so just slide that into there. Once you've got it fastened in there, you're just going to give it a whack. Make sure that it's nice and secure.
So here we are in block 42. We're going to be installing the chassis brace onto the chassis. We're going to be installing some frame mounts and roll cage adapters right onto the chassis. All right, Nate, let's get started by, let's install the chassis brace first.
That sounds like a great idea.
Quite a few different holes here on the chassis, so you're kind of just gonna have to line them up with your manual.
So something to note when you're putting the chassis brace on top of the chassis and you're struggling to find the holes, if you are, what you can do is there's a little notch in this chassis brace that fits in to right here. So you take this a little cutout, square cutout, and then right here, you just slide that on there, and then you're perfectly in position to start screwing things in. We're screwing this in with the screw holes that were put in place as we slid it into that little notch there. So we finished screwing in the chassis brace. We want to make sure that this M5 lock nut right here is nice and tight down on the bottom end of this, and that all of these screws fit flush along this bottom portion of the chassis, and then we're good to move on to the next part of this block.
Okay, so let's move on to our roll cage mounts. We're gonna take our roll cage inserts, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna take the roll cage insert and you're gonna take the barrel end and you're going to press it down into the plastic. What you can do is you can kind of just get it like where it's just kind of sitting right here at the edge, and you can either pull it down with the screw or you can do like Nate's doing and make sure it's straight in there before you hammer it down. So they're gonna mount onto these two positions here, and you want this side facing outward, you're gonna want that side facing outward like that. We're gonna use our 3372 flathead 6x6 screws to mount that down from the bottom of the chassis. So we primed it, and then we put blue thread lock. And he's just holding with one hand. He's holding the chassis, he's holding the mount, and screwing with his other hand. All right, he's adjusting it, make sure it's pointing outward, and he's gonna do a final tighten. Secured in place. All right, now you got your frame mounts. So, gonna set the frame mount up, and there's a threaded portion kind of off-centered. It's off to one side or the other. You want it facing towards the front. So you're gonna be mounting it into this location and this location on the chassis. There you go. You want to use flathead 6x6 with blue thread locker. And tightening this down, it could be a little bit difficult to hold with your hands. You maybe want to use a crescent wrench on one side and then torque it. Or just use your hand if you're He-Man strength like Nate.
So once we've got the frame mounts in, we want to be sure to leave them just a tad loose so that we can get the frame plate on there nice and even. So then afterwards we can do whatever final minimal adjustments we need to do to these, and then make sure that those are tight afterwards.
Okay, that's the end of block 42. Let's move on to block 43. Here we are, block 43. We're going to be installing the transmission assembly onto the chassis, and we're going to be using our flathead 6x16 screws. We're going to be using blue Loctite on those. We're going to be using primer. And go ahead and grab the assembly. You want to be facing the clutch bell towards the front of the car. Set it down on there. So it's going to be mounted on just like that. There's 6 holes, they'll mount up. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to lean it on its side to get the first screw in.
Okay, we've got our 6 screws put in here. Now we're gonna go ahead and flip it over. Make sure that we have the rubber grommets on these sides right here. We're gonna make sure that the longer end is positioned outwards.
All right, that's the transmission bolted onto the chassis. We're gonna move on and install the frame uprights in the next section.
Welcome into block 44. Mr. Randy's gonna show us how to mount.
What you're gonna do is you're gonna take this mounting hole, very front, and you're going to position it up with your brace mount there. I'm gonna hold that in place. We're gonna take our button head 5x16 screw. We're gonna give it blue Loctite. We're gonna prime it first. And then we're going to take our T-wrench and secure it in place. We're gonna blue Loctite our next button head screw. And we're going to mount it to the top of the transmission right here. Go slowly, make sure it's lined up before you go in. Okay, we're in. We use the T-wrench and check torque. We're tight there.
Remembering that we left the frame mount a little bit loose so that we could get everything in there nice and straight. We're gonna go ahead and tighten that now. Make sure that it's hand tight with our wrench, and that looks good.
Okay, Nate, now you're gonna take your frame rods. We're gonna be installing those. The first one we're gonna install is the rear one. You're gonna slide it into the bracket. There's a hole in the bracket. And take your button head 6x12. You're gonna put some blue thread locker on it. You're gonna prime it, line that up. Once it gets tight, we'll hit it with the T-wrench. There's a little chamber on the rod end. You use looks like 9mm wrench. You slide it right onto the little chamber to hold it in place and torque it. And we're gonna move to the next one, which is down here. We're gonna repeat that process. Primer, blue Loctite. Get it lined up. Got our T-wrench. And the last one goes right here. We got the side frame plate on. Now we're gonna get the other side mounted on, and that'll be block 45.
Going straight into block 45. Randy, what do we got? Heading straight into block 45. Randy, what do we got here?
So block 45 is the last block in bag G. We're going to be mounting up another gas tank mount. We're going to be mounting the side frame on, and we're going to get everything tightened up. So first things first, go ahead and slide the gas tank mount on the second bar. You want to make sure that the barrel is pointing forward to the front of the car. It just slides right on and sits right in the middle. Nothing holds it in place. So you're gonna go ahead and slide that one on like we did before.
You're gonna start by pushing this end straight onto the end rod right here so that it's basically secured to this area, and then we're gonna start to screw in the rest of the rods.
So we're gonna mount the frame plate to the frame plate mount with the button head 5x16 screw. Okay, now let's flip it over. Let's tighten the bottom up. Okay, hand tight. So that one goes into the top of the transmission location there. Going nice and slow.
And we're just checking to make sure that it's hand tight right here. Looks like it is.
Okay, now we can start mounting up our remaining button head 6x12 screws. Going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be tightening down each rod into place. So that's it. We've got the transmission mounted to the chassis. We got the frame uprights on and the crossbars. We got more mounting plastics for the roll cage, and we're all finished.
Alright guys, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for our next tutorial where we build the battery box. Be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell icon to be notified of the next time we put out a video.